Hello, and thank you for joining us in this speaking section of our course. In these next 4 lectures, we're going to be covering the different band descriptors that you're graded on for the speaking section. For the IELTS exam, in regards to the speaking, you are marked or graded on your fluency and coherence, your lexical ability, which means vocabulary, grammar accuracy, and also your pronunciation. So in this lecture right now, we're going to go over the qualities that will make up a really good fluency score. In order to do that, I'm going to really break down and explain to you what this section of the rubric means. That way, you'll know what you need to do to be able to score very well. Okay? Let's start. So, first of all, when we're talking about fluency and coherence, fluency refers to how well you can talk without pausing or hesitation or interruption. That's what fluency is. So if you're talking and there are a lot of, when you're doing that, or you have a lot of pausing in your speech, then that's going to hurt your fluency. Coherence is a little bit different. Okay, it's a little bit different. Coherence really deals with how well your ideas make sense together. Okay? Now, you've heard me say before, they're not grading you on what you say, but they are grading you on if your ideas actually fit together. Okay? Do your ideas fit together? So really understanding the difference between fluency and coherence and what they mean is very, very helpful. That's why I'm always trying to caution a student from really rambling on, especially in section 1. Some students just ramble on and on and on, and eventually what ends up happening is your ideas lose their coherence. They stop fitting together. They stop making sense together, and you're hurting your grade. Now, here is just this is directly from the rubric, and it's really, really important that you really kind of know what the difference is, right? If you're getting a 6, in terms of fluency and coherence, that means that sometimes you lose coherence. And the reason why is because there's occasional repetition, a lot of self-correction, or you're using a lot of connectives and discourse markers, but not always using them correctly. And then if you read for band 6 and for band 7, for band 8, for band 9, you can see the differences. When you move up to band number 8, it says you speak fluently with only occasional repetition or self-correction, right? So you have to be able to really, really fit within the context of that band score. Right? Now, when we're talking about coherence, when you're getting a high band score, there's rare or occasional self-correction. If there's any hesitation, it's related to content, not related to words. Okay, when it says related to content, that means that you're thinking of an idea or coming up with an idea, not hesitation related to words. Also, for a high band, you're able to use a range of connectives and discourse markers. When they hear you repeating the same ones over and over and over again, you're hurting your score. You can see down there for a low band score, a lot of repetition, slow speech, complex speaking causes you problems. Now, speed. Okay, if you want to really do well on the fluency score, then you really should have speed that's close to a native speaker. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's really important. When I'm talking about speed, I'm not talking about speaking really, really fast. Because very often that's what some people think. It means speaking really, really fast. Most native speakers don't really speak very fast. Okay? So it doesn't mean speaking really fast, because when you do that, very often you lose you really hurt your pronunciation. In terms of low fluency scores, when it comes to speed, if you're really slow in creating your sentences, or if you have really poor automaticity, which means that it takes a while for the word to come from your head to out of your mouth. This happens a lot when people are translating from their native tongue into English. Now, are your ideas logical and easy to follow? Are they logical and easy to follow? Right? When you're speaking, I hear people speak sometimes, and then by the time they finish their sentence, I have no idea what they were talking about, because it logically is not put together very well, right? Or it's not easy to follow. If you're speaking and you're talking like this, I like music because it's a great way for me to be able to relax and take my mind off of things, right? That sentence becomes really hard to follow. It becomes really, really hard to follow. In terms of where you see this a lot, in terms of a low score, in terms of fluency, in terms of logic and easy to follow, it really happens in part number 2. That's where I really hear from students where there are a lot of gaps in their reasoning and their logic. There's no order, right? There's poor connection of the ideas. It really shows up in part number 2. And that's why part number 2 is so impressive to a lot of graders. Can you speak without much effort? Right? What they mean by this in terms of a high score is your answer not broken or self-interrupted? Again, low score is all the ums and hesitations. So, how can you increase your fluency and coherence? Number 1, use some great discourse markers. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. Of course, your repetition and speed. Learn some phrases so you can be able to extend your answers. In fact, as a matter of fact, what I mean by that is, right? Learn some phrases that will help you to extend your answers. When you're able to extend your answers, it shows more fluency. And then also decrease the hesitation and the pausing. Record yourself. Listen to yourself. Say it again. Keep saying it over and over and over until you can get through a sentence without the pausing and hesitation. That's why also in one of the earlier videos I mentioned about you speaking English almost 24 hours a day, 2 or 3 weeks before you take the exam. Speak English. Now, some people might say to me, well, I don't have anybody at home to speak English with. Sometimes you just have to maybe go to people in your family and just tell them, hey, you're going to ask me a question sometimes. Sometimes I'm going to answer that question in English. I know you're not going to understand me. I know you're not going to have any idea what I'm saying, but I just have to practice answering sometimes in English. And then, of course, you could answer again, in your native tongue. But just that's what you have to do sometimes, right? Make the best of your situation. Everybody doesn't have a perfect situation. And what you have to do is make the best of the situation that you have. Now, here are some general discourse markers. As I was saying, anyway, here the thing is, to tell you the truth at the end of the day, right? These are different common discourse markers. Now, with discourse markers, it needs to be natural, okay? Don't force it. And don't say a discourse marker. You don't have to say a discourse marker in every sentence. Now, in some of the examples that I'm going to give you, you might see me use a discourse marker, in 2 or 3 different sentences. The reason why I'm doing that is I'm just trying to show you how a lot of them are used in context. But what I'm telling you, and I want you to listen very, very closely, is that I don't want you using them too many. Don't overuse them. The graders don't like that. Okay? Many times what you're doing is you're just showing the ability. You're revealing, hey, I can do this. And then you know what else? I can do that. Okay? Here's an example of some discourse markers in context. Right? So the first question says, does your name have any special meaning? Well, actually, it does. Naima is an Arabic name that means paradise. Next question. What are some places of interest in your town? To tell you the truth, Marrakesh has too many exciting features to name. The primary reason that visitors come to Marrakesh is for the Medina. In addition, some tourists use Marrakesh as a launching point to visit the desert located in Merzouga. Do you like your hometown? Certainly. I love Marrakesh. Actually, we have the best of both worlds in that a visitor can experience the old Amazigh way of life in the nearby villages and take part in the modernization that has occurred in Marrakesh. So the purpose of this was just to really show you how you use some of these discourse markers within context. Discourse markers are used really in speaking because that's just the natural way that native speakers, when they're talking with each other, they use discourse markers. You hear it all the time. Here are some more. Do you work or are you a student? Right. Well, until last August 2018, I was seeking a master's in computer science, but since graduating, I have been working in my field of computer science. Currently, I'm employed by the IBM New Products Division located in Accra, Ghana. What do you dislike about your job? I'm glad you brought that up because actually I was just thinking about the pros and cons of my employment. At the end of the day, I like 90% of my work, but I would have to say that I disapprove of the long working hours and the unusual schedule that results from us having to work with clients in Japan. Would you consider changing your job in the future? I'm glad you brought that up because I was recently considering the pros and cons of my employment. Right. So again, this is actually a repeat of the previous answer. We're not going to repeat that actually. All right, here are some methods to be able to really extend your answers. Okay. Get used to using the future tense, will, be, or going to. Number 2, add reasons. Always explain why. Don't just answer it and stop. Explain why. Compare things to the past. I used to love sugary desserts, but since the diabetes diagnosis, I've had to cut them out of my diet. Number 4, combine details together. I live in an apartment, right? Don't say like, I live in an apartment. I live there with my friend. I also live there with my cousin. Last month, I moved in with a stranger. Don't speak in those short little simple sentences. It's much more impressive if you say, I live in a flat with my cousin, friend, and stranger that I just met last month. Use contrast and also share your feelings. Always explain how you feel. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture on fluency. And next we're going to move into the lexical component. So I'll talk to you soon.